from my Dankan, my thank you. Simcha Sayona.
The Rav saw the WhatsApp. There was a topic proposed.
And that was Charles' question.
Yeah, so I misunderstood his question, so I want to have to think about it. I didn't have a chance to think about it. I thought he was asking something else, so I want to address what I thought he was asking. Is there a Tillim over there?
Tillim?
Yeah. Something Siddurim have, the Siddur has something to Tillim in the back.
I think one of
Thank you. This one has the Ashkenaz.
the blue ones.
It's okay.
Ashkenaz Tehillim. The second Tehillim.
Ashkenaz Chumash.
I didn't know it had Tehillim.
There is.
What are we getting now?
No, it's fine.
It's a joke.
No, it was just a joke.
Starting with points still.
Racial jokes we don't get you.
There is one difference between an Ashkenaz Torah and a Sephardic Torah by P'tzua Daka. So I think one of them it's Daka is spelled with A and the other one is spelled with an Aleph. The only difference in the word there. So I'm going to start out by telling you.
Maybe Rabbi Meir was a Sephardi.
Huh?
Maybe Rabbi Meir was a Sephardi.
Who?
Rabbi Meir. He said or and I.
That's right. I want to tell you an interesting Torah. Hashem HaKadosh said, I think he quoted from an Ari, that if a person feels that he's going into a rage, so a segula for him to bring that rage under control is for him to think of the pasuk B'ameh yizaka na'aris orchoi lishmer kidvarecha. That's a pasuk in Tehillim in Kapitel Kuf Yud Tes, where you have eight psukim for each letter. So he says that if you have in mind that pasuk, B'amei zakenaris orchei lishmer kidvarecha, that's a segula that it will enable you somehow mystically. It will enable you to throttle your rage. Are you okay over there, Josh? Huh?
I haven't been told otherwise.
You're because you're usually not so far away.
Yeah, I came late. I get a cup of coffee.
Okay, so he points out the following, that in the first pasuk over here, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Yehuda approaches Yosef, Vayema bi Adoini, and he says, please, Adoini. So he says that really the word be, he doesn't mean it. He's not in the mood of saying please. Yedaber no avdecha. Please, again, no, be. They're all the same. Please, avdecha dova ba'oznei adoini. Ve'al yichar abcha b'yamecha, and let not your, don't get angry with me. So he says that the word ve'al is also not sincere, because he really doesn't give a darn if he gets angry. Don't get upset with me. Get upset with me. And then kichamecha kifaroi, because you are like the Pharaoh. He says kifaroi, the chaf of kifaro is also not good. Kichamecha paro is just like you. So he says if you take those words, which Yehuda really didn't mean. So he says you'll find that the word be is, the base of be is bameh, the yud is yizaka. In na, it's na'ar, the aleph of na is s, and then it's archo, it's archoi. The al. So the aleph of al is orchoi, the lamed is lishmeir, and the chaf of kipara is kedorecho. So he said by saying those extra words, he was invoking the segula, because he wanted to control his anger.
His own anger.
His own anger.
Even though the husband's film wasn't opposed to him.
Yeah, but
He knew the puzzle.
it's whatever the school is, he plugged into the school part.
David HaMelech.
Or it's just interesting to make a josh about a puzzle that didn't exist yet.
Right.
That's what I'm understanding it.
So, but apparently, the school of the pasuk is dependent on those letters.
David HaMelech tapped into that.
Right. Anyway, so one of the interesting things over here is this phenomenon where Yehuda is a part of him is he's petitioning. You know, I want to. I would like for you to be compassionate. And I have a very painful situation here. I've got a kid whose father, you know, he's the only one left to his mother, and no one, one died or disappeared, whatever the case is. I mean, so he's making an old case. He's got an old man who's in pain, right? So he's, on the one hand, he is petitioning. On the other hand, he is. There's part of him which is saying that if you're not gonna be responsive to this appeal, I'm gonna wipe you out. So he's got. There's a whole other emotion which is simultaneous to this petition, is another, which is an iron resolve that you have to be responsive to this.
I mean, he was completely convinced of his derech Yehuda. He was pretty willing to accept din, but he wasn't willing to accept any form of not 100% din here.
What do you mean?
Another, I'm saying he was willing to put himself into slavery.
Right.
But if you're not prepared to accept my offer of slavery, which is the only justified outcome here, then we're going down.
We're going for broke.
Right.
The Shem Yishmael, parenthetically, the Shem Yishmael says, why is it? Thank you, Reb Chaim. He asks, why is it that Yaakov Avinu accepted Yehuda's guarantee as opposed to Reuven's guarantee? Reuven said, "Shnei bonai tomid." Okay, so granted, the Rashi quotes the Chazal that Yaakov said to Reuven, "That's kind of silly. I'm gonna take the lives of your children, not my children." So that's a whole other thing, which is we have to understand what was Reuven saying, but he does accept Yehuda's guarantee. He doesn't accept Reuven. So the Shem Yishmael says that people have resources that they themselves are not aware of. And the only time they will tap into those resources is when there is no other alternative. When they're trapped in a situation where nothing else, logic disappears, and any form of escape disappears. There's an interesting halacha, by the way, that when Klal Yisrael goes to war against a city, that they should not surround the city from all four sides. You surround the city from three sides, and leave one side open for escape. That's the halacha. That's the way you have to do it. And the reason for that is because if you surround them on four sides, then you give them no alternative. They have to fight because there's no way for them out. If they have one side where they can flee, then when they confront the very clear conclusion that they're going to lose, they'll run away. But if you block all escape avenues, then they have no alternative but to fight. Then you're putting yourself at greater risk. So never surround them on all four sides, on three sides. So.
And the fighting seems like it'll be an extra power to it because you get this extra co-op, when you have no choice
Right.
to fight, they have
Right.
an extra co-op.
Yeah, right. So then they have to invest themselves
If someone
completely.
feels fight or die, so
Right.
they'll fight.
Yeah.
Right. So, so the Shem Mishnah says as follows: that if a person is committed and he's resolved and he guarantees a certain course of action, he will do everything he possibly can. He will exhaust every possible energy, but when it's clear that he can't do anything, he'll say, "Look, I tried. So I'm an honest. I tried." So he said, so that was Reuven. Reuven said, I'm giving you an offer over here, which to me means everything. Yaakov said, okay, but if push comes to shove over there, you will say to yourself, I tried, and I can't save Binyamin. I tried everything I could. I can't save Binyamin. Yehuda came along and said, I guarantee Binyamin will come back. I'm guaranteeing this to you with my Olam Hazeh and my Olam Haba. My Nitzchus, my eternity is on the line. Yaakov said, okay. And he said, okay, because he knew that if push came to shove, that Yehuda, not having any, there's no escape route over here, his Nitzchus on, that he would find within himself koyach that he didn't know that he owned. Reuven would say, I did everything. But he would not be forced into that place where there's resources that he doesn't know about. When Yehuda says, my eternity's on the line, he knew that when all avenues would be blocked, that Yehuda would say, my eternity's on the line. He would discover in himself energy and resources and powers that he didn't know that he owned. And that's what happened over here. That when he confronted Yosef, with something that had such steel in it, had such power in it. Yosef ultimately couldn't resist it, but it had such power in it because, and under ordinary circumstances, you would say, look what you do. They found the cup, and he's guilty, and so what? We did everything. We pleaded. I petitioned, and it didn't work. Yehuda finally ended up in such a state of resolve and commitment. He said, if I have to, I'm going to take on the whole army myself of Mitzrayim. And Yosef knew that Yehuda could take on the whole army. That's what the state plots. But the point that I thought that Joel was talking about, but nonetheless, it's an interesting thing, is the fact that you have somebody who comes into a situation with two almost diametrically opposite feelings. On the one hand, he's got a feeling of, please, I'm genuine and I'm absolutely, completely at your mercy. Have rachmanis. And we know that dvarim hayotzim min halev nichnasim lelev, that when somebody speaks from the heart, it goes into the heart. And in order for someone who really wants something to make an impact, he has to go into it with that kind of wholeheartedness. They said that, I'm not, again, I don't remember the details, but there was some sort of a decree about, I think, education of yeshiva brachim, or they wanted them to in Europe to go, to have to study secular studies, and the Gedolei Europe were absolute about the fact that this was just a portal of the Haskalah into the Torah world. So they created a delegation, and the elder statesman of this delegation was the Chofetz Chaim. And he came in, I don't know if it was to the emperor or to the other, and there was a interpreter there, because he was, Chofetz Chaim didn't speak whatever language it was, and they needed someone to interpret what Chofetz Chaim to the. So Chofetz Chaim began to talk, and he broke into tears. He wept through the appeal, and then the interpreter turned to this magistrate, whoever it was, and said, "Let me tell you what he was saying." He said, "You don't have to." He said, "I understood Hartsprach. I didn't understand the language, but I understood his heart language." So Chofetz Chaim was victorious because of the fact that he spoke with a full heart, and Hartsprach. That's Dorma Yetzim and Alev Nichnasim. So Yehuda had to realize that if he wanted to be successful, he had to be full-heartedly invested in this appeal and getting his sympathy. On the other hand, there was part of him that was ready to take on all of Egypt. So you have, in one person, at one at the same time, you have two diametrically opposed feelings. One is soft and appealing and petitioning, and it's looking for sympathy, and the other one is violent. I tell a story that Moshe Teitelbaum, which he was the first of the head of the line of the Satmarov, the Sigatarov, all of the Teitelbaum. So he was the rabbi in the city of Eel. So and he was a Misnagid. He was a huge Talmid Chacham, a Goyen, and he was very, very opposed to this Hasidic movement and everything it represented. On the other hand, he was curious because he had heard about the Chayza in Lublin. He had heard about the seer of Lublin, who was a legendary figure in his own time, and he was very curious about what was going on there, but he couldn't bring himself to make this trip from Il to Lublin. In those days, such a trip took a lot of time, and was certainly something that was going to take a lot of energy. And he didn't want to be Mevatel Torah. It was a bit the Torah for him, so he didn't go. Then in one instance, there was a very important din Torah, and he was summoned to be the shlish on the Beis Din. He was the one who was supposed to be the third party on the Beis Din. So he had to make the trip, and you have to travel through Lublin to get to this place. So he decided He wasn't going to tell anybody. Il was not a Hasidic town. He didn't want them to know that he was even interested in Hasidus. But he was curious, so he decided he would tell no one, not any member of his family. No one would know, and when he got to Lublin, he would secretly make a visit to KSY and check him out. So they got to Lublin. He told his balagola to park his horse and wagon someplace, and he clandestinely he went off to check out he came to the door of the KSY, and the KSY, he didn't wait for him to knock. He opened up the door and he said, "Welcome, Ilalov." So he immediately was struck by the fact that the KSY knew he was coming and greeted him by his title, "Welcome, Ilalov." So during the trip, as he was going to Lublin, he decided that one of the things there were several things that bothered him, but one of the things that troubled him was the fact that Hasidim were constantly invested in simcha. And as we know, the halacha says that after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, that you have to be, we have to remember as much as we can the Churban, and for us to be besimcha, it has to be in some way, it has to be, it has to be throttled. So he decided he was going to ask him about it. So as soon as he came in, the KSY said to him, "Ilalov, I would like to explain something to you." He said, "I know people ask, how is it possible for Hasidim to emphasize simcha when they have a Churban Beis Hamikdash?" So that was already the third thing that he had from him. He knew he was coming, he knew who he was, and now he also knew what his question was. So he said, Moshe Lama Dovadaina. He said, there's a king, and he's a benevolent king, a wise king, and he's very, very, very concerned and generous to his subjects. But there are people who conspire against him, and they manage to chase him from the palace. And they issue them these usurpers to the throne. They managed to issue a decree that anybody who gives any kind of sanctuary to the king, they're going to summarily execute them. They'll be gone. So this king goes from house to house looking for some place to be, and then as soon as they see him, they say, "Sorry, Your Majesty, I'm not going to put my life in danger." So the capital city, you can't find any place to go. He goes to another, and every place where they recognize him, they won't let him in. So he finally comes to some very distant place in his kingdom, and comes to the poorest place in town. It's at the edge of town where all the poor people live, and it barely qualifies to be a hut. And he knocks on the door, and somebody opens up the door and recognizes him and says, "Your Majesty, please come in," and he welcomes him to the house. And he immediately sets about, "Can I offer you something?" And he doesn't have very much to give him, but whatever he has, he gives him. So and then when it comes time for him to sleep, he says, "Here, I'll give you the straw that I lie on. I'm sorry, So at some point in the king's visit, he says to him, "Your Majesty," he said, "I want you to know there's no greater joy that I have the privilege of having you in my house, in my home, and I can serve you, and I can wait on you, and I can give you whatever I have." He said, on the other hand, he said, "My heart cries that you have to be in my house, where all I can offer you is the straw that I sleep in and the crust of hard bread that I eat." He said, "So he said, I want you to understand, Your Majesty, the fact that I am happy and I smile because I'm so excited about the privilege of serving you, but inside my heart cries that you have to be in my house, and dependent on. So the Chayz HaKadosh said to the Yismach Moshe, he said to him, he said, what a privilege that we have to wake up every morning, and he says, and we have the honor of serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he said, you know, we're the most fortunate, the luckiest people on earth. We can serve you. He said, but he said, our heart weeps at the same time that, you know, the Shekhinah is in Golus, and look what we can offer you. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we don't have any Karbonas, we don't have the Kayin Ba'avidas, Levim B'Shiram, or the Zimram. So he said, that's the meaning of a chassid. He said, we rejoice on the outside and we cry on the inside. So, we are capable of, I mean, we all know that we're capable of having two emotions simultaneously. We love our children and we hate, at the same time that we love our children, we hate those people who threaten our children. We're capable of, one at the same time, of being happy about something that's happening in our family. At the same time, we're sad about something else that's happening in our family. And those things are both going on at the same time. Pinchas sees a prince of Israel committing an immoral act. You see Zimri, Nasi Shevet Shimon, and he's going. So he runs over to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says to him, you taught us, Habayel Aramis, Kanoin Payim Bay. And Moshe Rabbeinu says to him, the Igra, you only have a Pravanka, he says to him, you know the law, so you have to be the one to discharge this. What was there? And then as a reward for that, Pinchas, the reward is he becomes a Kohen, and I give to him my covenant of peace. I mean, he just committed a murder. Or he just took a life. So the reward for that, what the Midah Keneged Midah part of it is Brisi Sholem. So I think that there's a difference. When we talk about a kanoi, so it's a halach. I mean, Merinkin, if he comes to ask the Sanhedrin, or he comes to ask a Beis Din, am I supposed to do this? So they have to say to him, we can't tell you anything. Do whatever you feel you got to do. They're not allowed to tell him that the halach is he says to do that, because halach in Merinkin. So how does that work? And what's more, Moshe Rabbeinu, so did he forget? And if he did forget, then when Pinchas reminded him, so what happened over here? So I think that one of the things we have to process is that a kanoi is not someone who acts on impulse. Being a kanoi doesn't mean that all of a sudden you fly into this state of indignation and then you do something. That invariably is a mistake. Moshe Rabbeinu gets angry 3 times, and Chazal tell us, Kim sheba lechlal kas, ba lechlal tois. He got angry, made a mistake. Okay, so we should only make mistakes like Moshe Rabbeinu. But nonetheless, for at Moshe Rabbeinu's level, you got angry and you made a mistake. So anger and kanois are not the same thing. Kas is an expression of an uncontrolled, something that we're not in control of. And because we're not in control of it, we say something or we do something which is not measured. When I give the young men a chassan shmuz before they get married, one of the things that I tell them is, it's predictable in a marriage you're going to get angry. Never say anything when you get angry that you don't want to live with for the rest of your life. Because women don't forget. And
Don't forget. Yeah.
women don't forget. And
Don't forget that.
and you'll be all right for about 20 years, and then one day they'll say, you said that.
It was a Tuesday.
Huh? They don't forget. So if you don't want to live with it, don't say it. I think all of us have, at one time or another, have seen kanoim. Somebody walks over to somebody in the middle of the laning. You talk during the laning, and you're not allowed to. And it's not that he's wrong. You talk during the davening or during the chazoras hashatz. They go over and they're screaming at this person. That's not kanois. There's something else going on there, but it's not that that the message is wrong. It's just it was delivered wrong, and it was. If you really want to correct somebody, you want to deliver teichacha. Teichacha is an art. You have to step back and you have to think, how can I be? Am I the right person to do it? Maybe I should tell the rabbi to do it. Maybe I should tell his best friend to do it. Am I the best person to do it? How should I do it? Should I confront him right now? Maybe I should wait for a better time. There's so many things that go into this, and what word should I use, and how should I frame it? Teichacha is really a very, very delicate art, and nobody should undertake it unless it's really carefully thought out. The result of someone who is a mochiach, but does so thoughtfully. It's not that he doesn't get angry when it's happening. When I see people talking during the laning, I get angry, but I realize that it's not going to work if I admonish them that way. So I have to think through about how it should happen and when it should happen, and all the details. The point over here is that a kanoi is someone who loves Torah, and he loves the person who's involved in this thing, and works on all of the variables in this equation, and then does it in a way which, if it's at all possible, then the person will come up with a positive response. So I suspect that that Pinchas was not a kanoi at this moment. He was a kanoi for 30 years before this. He was someone who when he saw a wrongdoing, it would bother him, it would hurt him, and he would be indignant about it, but he would think about how to do this. And when this thing happened, it it inflamed everything inside of him, but in as much as he was a disciplined kanoi, so he said to himself, what is my responsibility under these circumstances, without the kind of the smug self, righteousness that goes into the person who's admonishing somebody else. I mean, there's lots of stuff that happens when a person does it, and it's not done with discipline and reason. So Pinchas, when he saw this, and the flame went on, he went through all of the steps that this required, and he came to the conclusion, Kanoin Pagin Boy. This is what has to happen. Klal Yisrael is in danger. And this is a terrible affront and something. So he goes over to Moshe Rabbeinu. And I suspect that one of the things that Moshe Rabbeinu went through over there, as he said, at this moment, if I act, there will be one tiny molecule of anger involved. I shouldn't do it because it's not 100% kanois.
You're saying kanayis is not anger?
What?
You're saying kanayis is the opposite of anger. You're saying kanayis is tuchacha?
Kanayis is not
We
right.
always
In this
think
case, it's not
kanayis is
techacha. I
right.
mean, he wiped him out, so it's not exactly techacha, but
Like you said, it's disciplined. Kas is not
It's
disciplined.
disciplined.
Kanos is disciplined.
right. This was not kas. It was kanois. He understood this was what the hour required, and he moved into it with kanois. Because he did it in a state of settledness, the reward for that is peace. It's not because because he didn't do it out of anger. He did it out of peace. So it is a midah keneged midah. So I think Yehuda over here went into this, said to himself, I'm 100% invested in making this appeal from a standpoint of a humanitarian position. If you have a heart in a soul, then I'm appealing to that, and I'm appealing to it with the fullness of everything that's human in me, every sensitivity in me, and simultaneous to that is the fact that human beings are capable of being happy and sad at the same time, and being heartfelt and steely resolved at the same time. And it's not a stira, it's not a contradiction. That's the human, that capacity of being emotionally and capable of two opposite emotions simultaneously is not a.
Right, could you clarify? You said that there's no steer in having two emotions simultaneously.
Right.
At the same time, Moshe Rabbeinu, you said, didn't want to take the action because he felt that there was some
Element.
kas by him, some element. So, what's wrong with having that element there if it's, you can have them both simultaneously. If you're able to control it, you're able to take action outside of that. I'm not clear on that.
You would say Pinchas probably needed some sort of, he didn't go over to the guy.
The what?
Pinchas didn't go over politely to him and say, excuse me, please stop, and let me just shut the spirit. Like, he probably had some sort of ramifications of kas in order to go kill somebody.
So I don't think so. I mean, I think he had, I think that the difference was that Moshe Rabbeinu recognized that Pinchas could do it with 100% purity, and he had to deal with the fact that there was part of him that was offended, and it was
Can you translate that for us?
what?
Can you translate that for us? Like, to what degree do we, you said that for yourself, if you feel that there's some sort of anger involved, as you won't.
So I think that first of all, I think that what some of the implications for us is I think that we need to cultivate canoas. In other words, I think that it is important for us not to take the position of apathy or being a spectator to our world. I think that we need to feel that we need to feel.
I could share along those lines. I remember Ravilla once mentioning that we see silence is a problem also because Paro had three
advisors.
Right, Yisro, Bilam, and Iyov.
Yeah.
And so Yisro's
Objective.
Bilam said yes, and Iyov was quiet. He was quiet, and we see he had service. So we see that being quiet.
So he said that when Hashem said to Iyov, this is something you got to go through, and Iyov said to him, why do I deserve this? So he said, well, you were silent. My power. So Iyov said, but I knew he wouldn't listen to me. So he said, well, why are you screaming now? He said, you're screaming now because it hurts. Does it help to scream when you're hurting? Screaming doesn't help. But when you're hurting, you scream. If you would have been hurting then, you would have screamed your objection. The reason that you were silent is because you didn't care. You weren't hurting.
Could we use this idea to examine Machlokes about between the Shvatim and Yaakov about Shechem? Our
I mean, that's a fascinating chapter, and
I mean, for that matter,
there certainly are overtones of that. There certainly are overtones of the fact that they wouldn't tolerate the violation, and maybe they acted out of not complete canois, and Yaakov felt that was not something that was going to go unpunished. Maybe, could be.
How about our
What?
Levi? Do you understand Levi? Klala.
That Levi?
Arur Apam.
Yeah, he cursed their anger.
Watch out, he's
So
a
what does
lady.
it have to do with?
What?
He's a lady, watch out.
And you're also Levi.
That's it.
Uh,
That's what I'm thinking about that.
There's something called impulse control disorder. So I think maybe what the Rebbe is saying is that the alternative is to manage impulses,
Right,
not to lose control, means managing them.
right. What I'm saying is that a kanoi is a person who has a lifetime of managing. So when it happens, it's not impulse, it's managed.
So why is it Dafka Levi that has this,
Oh, it's Levi, Shimon and Levi, Apom, he's cursing both of them.
both of them?
Both their anger.
So, why them?
Well, I mean, they were the two, not only in Shechem, but they were the two who conspired against Yosef. Shimon and Levi were the ones who came up with that plan. They were first. That was their intention to have him executed, and then when Reuben objected, so that turned into selling him. And when Yosef imprisons Shimon, Rashi says he took Shimon because Shimon was the one who threw him into the pit. So he took him into jail. It was like, that.
So here in Ramat Beit Shemesh, we have some kanayim, referred to as kanayim. It is possible that if they're hurting inside, you can have someone taking the same action. One is doing it out of anger, out of self-righteousness, and one is doing it out of really hurting for the sake of the Shekhinah.
Yeah, but even if you're doing it out of a sense of genuine pain, that doesn't mean that you act in a way which is counterproductive. Look, I don't really know the situation. I have no right to judge it. But from a very distant place, just from the kind of the ripples that did reach me, it seems to me that it wasn't done in a way that it didn't cultivate good feeling. It didn't bring people together. Huh?
Not for shalom.
Right, it didn't. So, it's hard for me to believe that that canoes was built on Pinchas's canoes.
We don't see Yehuda taking the steps that Yaakov did in terms of before he met Esav. I mean, we say there was tefillah, there was Torah, there was hachana l'milchama.
What is interesting, by the way, is that in the Kabbalistic writings, that they say as follows, that the fact that Shem went through this process of bris milah was not a completely valueless thing. And as a result, they went on bris milah. They were megulgol in the 24,000 members of Shimon, Shevet Shimon. There were 24,000 people and 24,000 men in Shechem who Shimon Levi took out. Those 24,000 were megulgol in Shevet Shimon, and the issue, once again, was one of morality. And when they suffered their deaths, that they were megulgol in the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva was a Gilgal of Zimri. So this thing is a thread that follows.
But it's not finished.
Huh?
It's not finished because the 24,000 Talmidim
Right.
didn't work out.
Didn't work out.
Yeah, so they're going to come back somewhere.
How could we Google what was Rabbi Akiva's chaylik in all of this?
And we are supposed to redeem them somehow.
Chaim Shmulevitz said that Pinchas, that a kanoi has, one of the times for being a kanoi is you have to want not to do it.
If they want not to do it, and that was Pinchas ben Aaron. Pinchas
No,
ben
that chaylik has to, in other words, that's a right l'chor according to what we're saying now. You can understand that you're not making a cheshbon if you haven't considered both sides. There has to be a tzad.
Right.
Not to do it. If not, you're just looking at one side. That's you're not gonna.
I would define the word kanai in a sense. I always thought kanai was being anger on behalf of Hashem.
So it's translated as being a zealot, but we're
not yourself, or something else.
Right, but
we're saying we're taking the anger part out of it. So
we're taking the anger part out, and we're bringing the fact that the intention is selfless. It's for, it's done by a person who has, in a certain sense, cultivated a disciplined personality when it comes to anger, and has reached the point where they can act in a reasoned way, which has all of the qualities of doing something which requires a great deal of energy and a great deal of force, but managed.
You talk about the one who's giving the tocha, but if you focus on the one receiving it, it's very difficult. I remember once just pointing out to somebody their tefillin shel rosh is a little off. So you think you're doing the person a favor. They should say shkoyach, give you a hug, whatever. I was like, ever since then, like the person can't look at you anymore. So what's the point? It's a simple example. I'm not being a cana. You're not giving tochacha. You're actually, you know what I mean. And yet the person's reaction, you know, the person receiving it.
Yeah, so you have to figure out.
Don't.
You have to figure out how to do it.
Hmm?
You have to figure out how to do it.
What was it really saying? What's the title?
Low self-esteem or something.
So what was the question?
Take a breath before you wipe somebody else out.